It won't feel like it for you, but I just finished recording like for an hour, so I have to keep going. I didn't do my intro for my last video. I forgot to say hello. It's a new day, a new slate, and a new video where I have something to say. I forgot to say it. Oh my god. All right, let's get into this video. But wait, before we do anything, these are not the vibes that we need going into this kind of video. So before anything, let's get down. Let's close the blinds, turn down the lights a little bit. And most importantly, let's get cozy. I hope that transition looked good. I don't know if it did. I'm wearing my cute little sweater from We Need Diverse Books. Ooh, hold on. You know what's even more cozier? There we go. Okay, now we are peak cozy right now. Okay, so you might be asking yourself, Kristen, why did we have to get all cozy? Why did we have to put on our cute little sweaters, lower down the lights, get the blankets? What is all this? We're almost in the middle of summer now. Well, let me tell you, we have to get down and we have to get cozy for this next book that I'm gonna review, which is called Arsenic and Adobo, a cozy mystery. So I actually got this book back last year, I think in September, and that was because the author, Mia P. Manansala, she was doing a book signing event at a local bookstore. So I decided to take a cute little day trip to go attend the book signing event. I actually planned to do like a little like vlog of the thing, so I do technically have film for it. We'll see if I put some of that in here, but it was a really fun experience. I had actually not read Arsenic and Adobo, but she was doing the book signing to celebrate the release of her most recently published one, which is called Murder and Mammon. I do have that book. It's also up here. But so this one is signed. Let me show you. So it's right here. Ta-da! And it's cute because in the other one, she wrote like this book has good chismes or something in it. And at first I was like, what is chismes? And then I went to the cute little pronunciation guide in the back, and that's how they say chisme, which is gossip. Honestly, reading this book like reminded me that Tagalog and Spanish are very closely related because unfortunately, we were both colonized by the Spaniards. We have a lot of similarities, but it was funny because I was listening to the audiobook for this book, which is so top tier. The voice actress for this book, she put her whole soul into reading this book. It was such like an experience. She was so funny, like effortlessly, like it was so good. But it was funny because I was listening to the audiobook, right? And I was doing my little thing. And then all of a sudden they would say stuff in Tagalog and I would just like click and I was like, I understood what they just said. Why did I understand what they just said? Like it was crazy. I read this book and I'm sorry. I'm not going to take any criticisms. I'm not going to take any kinds of negative feedback on this. This is the most amazing book I've ever read. I will not be arguing. This is one of the books that I would definitely say is like, it's just good fun. It's just so amazing. So like any kinds of like critique or people being like, blah, 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 narrative, blah, 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 I don't care. I don't care. This book is so good and it hits so good for me. I love it. I actually just finished reading this book, again, Arsenic and Adobo by Mia P. Manansala. So she does a series. I believe we're already at like 5 books in this series. So these are cozy mysteries, which is a genre I did not know existed before this. But essentially the premise of this book is that the main character, Lila, anyway, she's a girl from Chicago. It's a city that's exciting. It's a city that's inviting. It's a city for a woman just like me. So she's technically from the suburbs. Like think of it as like she's from Naperville, but she's like, I'm a Chicago girl. So she recently moved back to her cute little suburb after her fiance cheated on her in Chicago. They were running like a restaurant together and she found out he was cheating on her. She left him, went back to her hometown to help run her family's restaurant, Tita Rosie's. So she's helping to run this restaurant. They're making amazing food, literally so delicious. And she is having run-ins with her previous ex-boyfriend. His name is Derick Winters. They used to date in high school, but now he's like a food critic and he's been recently targeting their restaurant. So he'll go there and he'll eat like everything on the menu and then insist that it's awful and then send back like empty plates. Lila will come take his plate and he's like, wait, let me lick it first. Trying to pretend like the food is bad and then literally like sniffing the garbage on the way out. So one day, Derick comes in with his stepfather, Mr. Long, and they're having like lunch together, and like Lila's kind of giving him like, you know, poop. And she's like, Derick, just admit you like the food. It's fine. No one's gonna get mad at you. Just stop being like this. And he's like, blah, 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 blah. I'm a man. I don't like you. So Lila is serving their food, and she gives them like some desserts that she's trying out because she's like a pastry chef. She also like cooks, and that was her previous ambition. She wanted to open a cafe in Chicago. She wasn't able to like pursue that dream because she had to come back to help her family's restaurant, but she was still like testing out some recipes. So she gives Mr. Long and Derick some desserts to try, and everything is going good until all of a sudden Derick starts acting a little weird. He's getting a little red in the face. He's getting a little sweaty. Things are not like, he's having a weird kind of reaction. And then all of a sudden he slams face first into his plate and passes out. They immediately call the paramedics. They come, they take Derick to the hospital where he is pronounced dead. So the whole book is Lila now having to solve the mystery of what really happened to Derick Winters. The local police force of Shady Palms, led by previous hotshot detective from Chicago, Detective Park, he believes that Derick was murdered, and specifically that his food was poisoned by someone at the restaurant, and he locks in on Lila. So the restaurant is shut down. They no longer have income. And it's all up to Lila to figure out what really happened to Derick so they can reopen the restaurant and clear her name. Again, as I previously mentioned, I'm not taking any kind of hate on this book. I'm sorry. I'm going to be so irrational right now. I'm not hearing any kind of arguments. This is my favorite book. It was so good. I loved it so much. And the reason I'm saying that is because like this is truly a book where like you just got to enjoy it. Like literally just have some compassion. Like don't be allergic to joy, happiness, and fun, because this book is joy, happiness, and fun. I think it's like such like a cute little read. It like you can't hate it. You really can't. It's so good. First of all, I'm a little biased just because this book is like really around like Filipino culture and things of that nature, like the cuisine. I felt so identified. Definitely don't read this book on an empty stomach. It's going to make you hungry. So I'm going to get into it. First and foremost, Lila Macapagal as a character, I identified so hard with her. Like I was like, oh my God, it's like looking into a mirror. First of all, she's so effortlessly funny. And I think sometimes it's hard to really like portray having a character be like effortlessly funny. And this is like multi-layered. The voice actress that did the audiobook absolutely nailed it on the comedic timing for all of her lines. And just in general, like her dialogue, her like internal monologues, her thoughts, every aspect of her character is so alive and on the page. Like she truly like dominates as our narrator, as our main character. She's just so effortlessly funny. And like what really solidified for me, I was like, I absolutely love this girl, is because so in the story, like her family members call her Lila, but some of her like friends and the other people she meets along the way call her Lila. And at one point, one of the characters, which is her love interest, is like, have I been saying your name wrong? I've been calling you Lila, but all your family members call you Lila. And she was like, oh, well, that's like technically how you say it. That's the like right pronunciation. But in school, everyone just said Lila. So I never corrected them, which I feel so hard, but the reverse. Because fun fact and little like tangent of the day. So Kristen, right? The I in my name is a specific I sound that doesn't exist in the Spanish language. Like any I sound is like the very short like E. So they don't have like the I sound of Kristen. So like a lot of like my family members or in general like people that I've met that speak Spanish as like a first language will typically struggle to say my name. So it always comes out as like Kristen instead of Kristen. And in general, like it's just not a common name. So a lot of times, especially like I had a lot of coworkers that I would literally just tell them my name is Cristina, which is not my name. At first, like it was like, oh, I didn't really mind. It wasn't something that I really cared about. Honestly, I respond to almost any name. I had a teacher call me Stephanie for like a really long time and I just never corrected him. And I would answer to Stephanie. I'm just remembering that. How did I let that happen? Why did I let that happen? That was funny. That was funny to think about. That was a cute little memory. And like after a while, I was like, well, like Kristen is my name. And I have no problem like answering to different names, but I think like in general it might do like a more disservice if I just like default to another name because it's like quote unquote easier to pronounce. And it's really not an issue to just say like, oh, well, you know, kind of like sit down and be like, oh, Kristen, like just be like, oh, that's how you say it, or just like correct someone if they don't say it correctly. It's really not that big of a deal. Sorry, back to the book. But another reason why I really like it is that it's so cute because it's all like baking and restaurant themed, and all the other suspects in this mystery are all restaurant owners, and it's just so cute. And like all the restaurant names are like super gimmicky. I was gagging. It was so good. There was like, oh, my battery's dead. Come on. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So some of the restaurant names, like they're super cute. Like we have Java Joe's, we have Pierogi Palace, but Pierogi Palace was closed, which is like, a mystery that never gets solved in this book, but maybe it'll get solved in the next one. We also have El Gato Negro, which translates to the Black Cat, which is a Mexican restaurant. Soleil Sushia, which is the Japanese restaurant opened by the Satos. We also have it's like a barbecue restaurant. I forget what it's called. It made me want to have barbecue so bad though. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm getting so off track. I'm talking about food. I'm a little hungry, as you can tell. So the story follows Lila as she's going to these different restaurants because they all have a reason to want Derick dead. He went to all of their respective restaurants and gave them bad reviews, which may or may not have affected the restaurants as a whole. I will say, like, so there is an author's note at the beginning of this book in which she talks a little bit about her sensitivity readers. And I just want to say, I think it's a beautiful thing when authors have sensitivity readers. I think that's really crucial when you're kind of like, honestly, with any kind of book, you want someone to look at it before you put it out into the world. And specifically, you want perspectives from like so many different people so you can see like maybe something that you as the writer aren't. For example, in my Molly X Chung video, I posted that video, and upon like a first viewing, there were some things that I was like, oh, I should really expand on this, which is why I put little like context notes in there. And I went back and recorded just like some audio of me like further going into certain points. But then once I posted the video, there were so many comments that were pointing out parts in the video where I didn't expand or like I didn't explain certain things. And reading those comments, I was like, oh my God, you're so right. I didn't go into these things, and I wasn't specific. I didn't like disclose A, B, and C. And it was just like, oh yeah, this is something that I can acknowledge, that I didn't do it maliciously, but something that I just didn't see when I viewed it the first time, the second time, and all the times while I was editing. So it's really crucial to have sensitivity readers. And like, I think this book is very aware of itself, and like you can very clearly see the author in the story. So one of the like biggest examples of this is a section where Lila is talking to Adina. That's her best friend in the story. She's a barista at Java Joe's. She is, I believe, Muslim, which I'm sorry, side note, I have a lot of like friends that are Muslim, and I've learned a lot about just like halal and like how like the dietary restrictions associated with like halal. So the representation of that, I was like, girl, I get it. I see you. It's just like, it was such a beautiful interaction to see like not only like Adina just being like, oh, like, is this halal? But like also Lila being so aware of her friend and just being like, hey, are you okay to eat here? Or like, hey, we can go somewhere else. Is there something you like on the menu? Because sometimes, and you know, as people that like don't have dietary restrictions, like you can't just assume that you can go out everywhere with like people in your friend groups that do have dietary restrictions and assume that they'll be okay eating like table salt. And that's not just like to say like people that follow the halal diet, but also just like vegetarians, vegans, people that have certain allergens, people that are gluten-free. Like you can't just assume you go out anywhere and be like, oh, you're okay just eating like a salad, right? With only lettuce. You're okay with that, right? So just seeing like Lila as a character be so hyper aware of Adina and her needs was like so comforting, and it was so just like nice and wholesome, and I really appreciated it. But anyway, there's a part where Lila and Adina are talking to each other. So Adina is telling Lila that like her friends, or no, I'm sorry, her family think that they're secretly dating. And Lila corrects herself because she's like, didn't you tell them that we're friends? And in her like inner monologue, in her narration, she says like, well, you can't say like you're just friends because it implies that platonic relationships are below romantic ones. And like it really just like devalues platonic relationships that we have in our lives. And I'm just like, wow. Because yeah, like that term, like to say like, oh yeah, we're just friends is used so commonly in just like our day-to-day lives as a society. And I think like even me, like I didn't think twice about it. And if she had not put that note in there, I don't think I would have like stayed hung up on it. But just to hear that perspective and be like, oh, you're right. Platonic relationships do have equal value to romantic ones. Just to hear that iterated was just like, oh, you're right. And it shows not only a level of awareness on the author's part, but also just like recognizing that even though whatever percentage of readers would read that and be like, oh, why did she feel the need to say that? But there's also a percentage of readers that are so grateful to hear that said in a book. It speaks volumes to her as an author, just being aware of her audience and the people that she's writing for. And this girl, oh my God, she literally ate with this book. And I know that's kind of a pun because it's all about food. Her descriptions of all the cuisine was so like the definition of like going into the grocery store when you're hungry, because I was like, girl, every time I picked up this book, I was like, man, when's my lunch break? It just made me like so hungry. And specifically, I was like, man, I really want to try Filipino food. My bad, Derick. I'm forgetting that you're the reason that we're reading this book. The investigators go into the restaurant. They test some of the plates that he was eating off of, and they test positive for arsenic. And they're essentially like, oh, well, the rice was probably like, it had arsenic in it. He had like a really heavy buildup of arsenic in his body. And that was probably what killed him. Lila's like, okay. And like, she's very like, obviously she's innocent. So she's like, I don't know what you're trying to say. And Detective Park is like, girl, you killed him. Because also they search the restaurant and they find a duffel bag full of drugs in her locker. And it's really like, you're like, whoa, what's happening? Because she gets arrested on drug charges. And she's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Because apparently in this cute little small town, they're saying that there was like a drug ring that was going on in their cute little town of Shady Palms. But the Detective Park, broke up the ring and brought peace to the nation. So now he's like, ugh, we can't have this like back in town. Like I'm figuring out who killed Derick and why, and I'm doing it now. So he's like really on to Lila, right? But Detective Park is also really good friends with her Tita Rosie, which is like her aunt. It's cute. I like it. I will say, don't read this book if you're trying desperately to escape your past in high school, because Lila is constantly like referring back to her friend groups and the people that she knew from high school. So if you're desperately trying to leave that life behind, don't read this book. It really encapsulates like the small suburban like lifestyle, because yeah, like when you're in a suburb, you're like always surrounded by the people you knew from high school. You can never escape. So, but yeah, throughout the story, very quickly, this like freak accident with Derick, and like, oh, maybe he just like had an allergic reaction. He was diabetic, so maybe he just didn't take his insulin. Like all these things that are like, oh, maybe it was just like, you know, he died from like a freak accident, quickly turns into drugs, murder, mystery, and all these different things. So this is what happens. So first, Lila is going to these restaurants trying to figure out if any of them had a motive to kill Derick, because again, he left horrible reviews on their restaurants. So first, she goes to talk to one of her cousins that works at the hospital to figure out what was his definite cause of death. But her cousin is like, hey, HIPAA, I can't tell you. And she's like, okay, fine. So she talks to an old high school friend, but she's also like, I'm not going to tell you. And she's like, okay, fine. So very quickly throughout her investigations, things are happening. First, she gets arrested on drug charges. And then her friend, Janet, reaches back out to her and she's like, hey, I know like we kind of fought the last time we talked at the hospital. I'm going to tell you some good information that you need to know. So you need to get over here. And she's like, okay. So they're supposed to meet up for lunch at Sushiya, which is the sushi restaurant. And the reason she goes to the sushi restaurant is because while she is being held In the little jail cell, she meets Mrs. Sato, one of the co-owners of Sushiya, and she correctly deduces that Mrs. Sato and Derick were having an affair. Because Mrs. Sato says, oh yeah, Derick left a horrible review on our restaurant, blah, 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 blah. And then quickly afterward, after he left that review, the health inspector came to their restaurant, and on the exact same day that something was faulty with their refrigerator, and he was like gonna make them pay $1 million in fines, and they were like, please don't do that. So he was like, okay, fine. We won't make you pay the fines, but you have to hire this specific contractor to fix your restaurant. Very quickly, Lila realizes that this is not unique to the Satos, and it happened a few other times with the other restaurants. So she's like, Derick had to be a part of some kind of scam. Like, there's no way that the health inspector is going to every single restaurant that he happens to review, and that he's making them hire this one specific contractor. They have to be making some kind of cut. So she finds this out, and then Janet is like, hey, I have really important information for you. We need to talk. But she never shows up to the lunch. So Lila is like, okay, fine, I'm gonna go talk to you. So she goes to the hospital, but when she goes into Janet's office, she's on the ground. Someone knocked her out. So now the police are investigating her because they're like, you have now like been involved with Derick, drugs, and you happen to stumble upon someone that was like about to die. That doesn't seem like a coincidence to me. And she's like, I promise you, I'm just in the wrong place at the wrong time all the time. And then she finds out from the waitress at El Gato Negro that that girl, I forgot what her name is, I think it's Evelyn, she used to date Derick for a very brief period in time. Her uncle used to be the owner of El Gato Negro, but after Derick reviewed the restaurant, he kind of sparked a hate group of people to come to the restaurant, and there were accusations about the citizenship status of the employees at the restaurant. So this poor family had to leave and go back to Chicago. The restaurant was quickly taken over by Evelyn and her mother. So they are running El Gato Negro now, and everything is going fine. Everything is going great. Evelyn started dating Derick, not knowing that he was the cause. And then once she found out, she hit him. Finally, someone had to hit him. So at first, Lila is like, I'm sorry, girl, but you're like a prime suspect right now. Like, I can't think of anyone else that had a better motive. And she was like, no, I didn't do it. And she's like, okay, yeah, you're right. You have a pretty good point. She's interviewing all these people, and even if they have motives, like, she keeps coming back to the main point, which is he was poisoned with the food from their restaurant. They're the only ones that have access to that food. What happened to Derick? Even if any of these people did have motives, it's like no one had access to the food other than them. So she's kind of like running around in circles because nothing is making sense. And then it's Derick's wake. So she goes and she's like talking to Mrs. Long, aka Mrs. Winter, aka his mom. Mr. Long is also there, and it's very heavily implied that she's abused by him because she kind of like flinches when he goes near her. She's very like curled in on herself anytime she's by Mr. Long. He's very authoritative when talking to her. So they just do not have a good relationship, and he is very abusive towards her. There's a common theme throughout the story, and kind of like Lila's character arc, is that she's constantly like running away from her problems. When she found out her fiance was cheating, she ran back home. She's been avoiding her friend Adina because Adina wants to open a cafe with her in Shady Palms, but Lila doesn't want to tell her that she doesn't see herself staying in Shady Palms. So she is just constantly running away from one thing after the other. She also has a secret kind of like romance, like unrequited romance with Adina's brother Amir. And that has been going on for like years, like literally since she first like lived in Shady Palms, but she has been like avoiding him. They've never really talked about it. So she's like just constantly running away from her problems. And at one point she's talking to her friend, and he tells her, you can't keep running away from this stuff. Like, you ran away from Derick's wake. Like, you didn't even really give your proper respects. Like, even though, you know, he was kind of a bad person later on in life, like, you knew him. And if he was a bad person, that was one thing, but you also knew his mom, And like the least you can do is just like properly pay your respects. And she's like, okay. So she goes back to the Long household to see Mrs. Long. Her name is Nancy, I'm sorry. So she goes to see Nancy, and at first she's not answering the door, but she sees Nancy come across the back of the building. So they go inside, everything is fine. They're eating cookies. They're eating ube crinkles specifically. It's Lila's recipe. And Nancy goes into the kitchen to get coffee, and Lila follows her. And once they go inside, they see Mr. Long on the ground, stabbed. I was gagging, like I was cackling to myself, because Nancy goes, it appears my husband has been stabbed. Lila, can you call the police for me, please? Like, it's so obvious. It's just kind of funny. This is like Lila's third time being in the same room as like a dead body. So Detective Park is like, what is wrong with you? What is happening to you? And she's like, please, I don't know. They're doing their little investigations, and it comes out that the knife Mr. Long was stabbed with came from Tita Rosie's kitchen. So they start questioning her, and Lila is mad as hell. Lila is super uber angry. Amir is immediately like, I'm on the way to the police station. We're gonna figure this out. They can't be questioning her without me present. They're still going around in circles, and nothing is really making sense. Lila finds out from one of her high school friends that Derick was involved in the wrong crowd after he went to community college, and he started dealing drugs. And specifically, once he was dealing, the previous owner of Java Joe's, her name's Elena. I've been calling her Evelyn. I'm sorry. I just realized I messed that up. So while Derick was dealing drugs, the previous owner of Java Joe's, her name was Jo, she died of a drug overdose, and Kevin, the current owner of Java Joe's, took over as the owner. So very quickly, the pieces start kind of falling into place, and it all comes to a head when Adina, she had an in at the medical examiner's office, and she says that they found out the real reason that Derick died. They found out his cause of death. It was not arsenic poison. It was, in fact, nicotine poisoning. And Lila at first is like, nicotine poisoning? How did that even happen? And Adina explains that you can very easily poison someone with liquid nicotine. And she's like, how do you even get liquid nicotine? Now, if you don't know, that is the liquid that comes in vapes. Even more reason not to vape. It's deadly, as we know from this book. This book is the no smoking advertisements that we need in the world. So while she's on the phone with Adina, and while Adina's about to be like, I know exactly who has access to that, she is attacked at Java Joe's and she hangs up. So Lila gets in her car. She speeds over to Java Joe's. It's winter. It's slippery. Her car like kind of crashes into a ditch. So she has to go into Java Joe's, and she's like banging on the doors. No one's answering. She's like, oh my God, where's Adina? And then who answers the door? Kevin, the owner of Java Joe's. So she's talking to Kevin, and very quickly she notices him pull out a vape pen, and everything clicks in her mind, and she realizes Kevin killed Derick. So the reason Kevin killed Derick was because Jo, the previous owner of Java Joe's, was his sister, and she was actually in recovery when she opened up Java Joe's. She started dating Derick, and he was involved in drugs, so he eventually put her back on, essentially caused her relapse. Derick was also using Java Joe's as a drop-off place with his father, Mr. Long. I know they were all in on it. So after she died, Kevin came back and he was like, I'm gonna get revenge on these people. Derick asks Kevin if they can keep using Java Joe's as a drop-off place, and in exchange, whatever, they'll give him money. So at first he agrees to it, and they're like, okay, everything's fine. And we actually find out that after Jo died, Derick became kind of a double agent. So he became an informant for Detective Park to kind of bust the whole ring. And they had been doing it in little small batches since Lila moved back. But 2 weeks before they were supposed to do their really big bust was when Derick died. So that was why he thought that Lila had something to do with it, especially because they found the drugs in her locker. So Lila tells Kevin Derick was turning a new leaf. He was an informant. And Kevin was like, okay, and my sister's still dead. I don't care. he was not a good person. He deserved to pay. Derick was also planning on running away with Mrs. Sato and starting a new life after he was like done being an informant. And he told Kevin about it, and Kevin was like, no, you don't deserve to live a happy life after you killed my sister. I'm not gonna let this slide. Kevin used to always make Derick's coffee orders. He wouldn't let Adina do it, and it was, now we know, because of their like drug relation. So before Derick went into Tita Rosie's kitchen for the very last time, he was drinking a coffee from Java Joe's, and Lila told him not to bring in outside drinks and that he had to finish it. So he drank the whole cup. But that was the cup of coffee that Kevin made for him. And he was like, I made him one last coffee. And he poured in the liquid nicotine and killed him. So Kevin has Adina tied up in the back. He tries to get Lila, but she ends up fighting back with the help of Adina. And she knocks him out with a statue of a wiener dog, which is not funny. It's a little interesting that that is the weapon of choice. And everything turns out okay. They pin the murder of Mr. Long on Kevin, but Kevin is very vehement that he was not the one that killed Mr. Long, because we found out that it was actually Mrs. Long, aka Nancy Winters. And the reason she did that was because Mr. Long was actually also planning on killing Derick, because he had a suspicion that Derick had turned for the police. So he was slowly poisoning him with the arsenic, which is why they found such elevated levels of arsenic in his bloodstream. So Nancy believed that Mr. Long was the person that killed him, and Mr. Long thought he was too. So he was the one that planted the drugs in Lila's locker, because he was their landlord. He owned their restaurant. So once she overheard him, she killed him, and Lila knew about it, and she like made the connection very quickly. She tells Kate, Mr. Long's sister, who is actually really close friends with Nancy Winters, and she's like, as far as I know, I didn't figure this out. I have no idea what happened. By the time I got back home, you guys had already left. I have no idea where you are. I'm looking this way, you're running that way. Type of beat, right? So the story ends with Kevin being arrested. He's also in a coma. I know. So he gets arrested, and Lila decides that she is going to stay in Shady Palms and open up a cafe with Adina, because as a parting gift to Lila for her kindness, Mrs. Long leaves the deed to not only Tita Rosie's, but also to Java Joe's. So now they are the proud owner of 2 businesses in Shady Palms. Yay! Overall, I really love this story. Other than like the familial aspects of it, just like the cute like vibes, the cozy, truly cozy vibes. Like I get it now. I understand what they mean by cozy. It was so good. And you know, there's a cute little romance. There's like a love triangle between Amir, which is their lawyer, Lila, and another character that I didn't talk about because so there's actually a local dentist. His name is Jay, Dr. J, if you will. And his brother is actually Detective Park. So they're like cute little brothers, right? And he has a cute little romance with Lila as well. He goes with her to like the restaurants, and he's just like super nice. He's literally sunshine. So there's like a little like romantic kind of tension between her and the good dentist, the good doctor, if you will, and Amir, the lawyer. So that love triangle is like still open at the end of the book, because she's like, I'm gonna deal with you later. I just evaded drug and murder charges. I can't think about this right now. So I'm hoping that that gets developed. And as like a little selfish kind of like, I'm crazy, I kind of want her to have a romance with the detective. Is that crazy? Am I delusional? Maybe. I just think it'd be fun. I just think it'd be like a cute little like enemies to lovers kind of bit. But by far, my favorite part of this book is actually at the end, because as I mentioned, I was reading the audiobook while I was following along. And at the end, hold on. At the very end of the book, they have recipes. Yes, you can make the food they talk about in the book. This is truly one of the most unique aspects of a book I've ever read. I have not read a book that was interactive in this way, and it was so cute. So I decided I'm gonna make them. The main, like, I'm not gonna say the main, but so Lila develops these cookies called ube crinkles that they bring up throughout the book, and they actually included the recipe. So I was like, I'm going to make it. So here they are. I love this color. I actually stained like my whole floor purple, and I had some on my hands and even my legs. Like I was literally purple for a little bit. So I've actually never had ube before in my life, but I was like, wouldn't it be so fun if for the very first time I had ube, I did it like on camera and with this cute little recipe provided by the author. I have the full dough like downstairs, so I was waiting to make the full batch because they're supposed to be like kind of like underdone in the center. Like if you look at the instructions, it's like they should be firm on the outside but slightly underdone in the center because it's like very jammy. I'm the kind of person that's like, I need to cut the chicken while I'm cooking it to make sure it's not raw in the center. So this was a little scary for me, but I'm gonna try it. First, here it is. The lighting doesn't do it justice. This is very, very purple. Like it's super, super cute. Okay, so I'm gonna cut it. I was making the dough right and I smelled it and I was like, oh my God, it's so good. So this is what it looks like in the center. Look how purple that is. Okay, hopefully it doesn't stain my teeth, but I'm gonna try this right now. Oh my God. I'm drooling. Oh my God, I'm drooling. Oh my God, that was so good. I think I love this. I can't even explain how it tastes like. It's like a sweetness I've never had before. Oh my God, it's so good. And it's so like soft and chewy. Oh my goodness, that was so good. Oh my God. How have I never had ube before? That was like absolutely to die for. Back on track, as I was saying. Overall, I give this book a 5 million out of 5. It was so good. I loved every aspect of this story. It was so fun, so entertaining, so engaging. You can't possibly read this and be in a bad mood once you finish. Like, I'm sorry. It's absolutely amazing, and it is going to get my special stamp of honor. Anyway, you should definitely go support the author Mia P. Manansala on Instagram and her website where you can find the recipe. If you don't already have the book, you should have the book. Be sure to support the cover artist. My arm is shaking while I'm trying to press down on this. She actually has a new book coming out. I think she just announced the title, and it's like Death and... Okay, so it's called Death and Dinuguan, which I hope is how you say that like properly, but it's book 6 in the Tita Rosie's Kitchen Mysteries series. So be sure to follow that once it comes out. Other than that, she has 5 other books that you can choose from. I definitely highly recommend Arsenic and Adobo, and it's a perfect addition to my bookshelf. I'm gonna put it right by her signature. Oh, I put it f***ing crooked. Can I peel it? No, it's fine. It's fine. It's just for my library. More human that way. Ta-da! I hope that's focused and in frame. Yeah, anyway, thank you guys so much again for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please be sure to follow me on my social media at Listen to Kristen on Instagram and TikTok. If you have read this book, please tell me how much you loved it. If you did love it. If you didn't, that's okay, I guess. I'm only a little bit upset. No, I'm just kidding. If you decide to pick up this book, please let me know what you think about it. I think it's amazing, and I want to share this love and joy with all of you. So yeah, thank you so much again. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. That's it. I'm actually going to take a bit of a lunch break before I come back and finish recording. So yay. Okay, cozy vibes, done.